Hi all, my name is Kapil Mittal and today we are going to study Banking and Finance section under the Indian economy for UPSC exam. This is very important section, so we will study this in a structured and coherent manner. In part 1 we will study about the history of banking, and under that we will study the origin of modern banking industry in India, origin of Reserve Bank of India, and then banking reforms and nationalization of the banks, and then the important dates in the banking history of India, and the few dates about the establishment of few other various banks, and key landmarks in the journey of RBI. And in part 2 we will study about the structure of banking. Under that we will see what is the structure of a banking system in India. Under that, scheduled versus non-scheduled banks, different types of scheduled commercial banks, and what is State Bank of India Group, and the old private banks, new private banks, regional rural banks, cooperative banks, and their further breakup we will study. And under part 3 we will study the types of bankings, under which we will see various jargons and terms related to the banking, like branch banking, unit banking, mixed banking, chain banking, retail banking, and there is a whole list. And after that we will cover a few other topics which are not covered here, that are very important related to the prelims MCQ. Okay, so let's start with the part 1, history of banking. So earliest evidence of banking in India is found from the period of Vedic civilization. During those days, loan deeds were called Rinpatra or Rinlekhya, and these were very prevalent at that time. Interest rates as well as usury were prevalent in Vedic India, and in Hindi we call it this as Soodkhori. The Vedic word Kusidin refers to an usurer. In Hindi we call it Soodkhor, and this term is also found in Manu Smriti. So if UPSC will ask from where that Kusidin word or Soodkhor word is used, that is reference from Manu Smriti. Various types of instruments were found in Buddhist, Mauryan and Mughal periods. So at that time we can found other instruments also. The Arthashastra of Kautilya mentions presence of bankers during the Mauryan era, and there were instruments in Mauryan era known as Ades, which are equivalent to bill of exchange of current times. We will study this later on. Origin of modern banking industry in India. Who were the indigenous bankers of India? Since ancient times, businessmen called Srops, Seths, Sahukars, Mahajans, Chettis, etc. has been carrying on the businesses of banking. And these indigenous bankers included very small money lenders to Srops. Their scale is differing from person to person and place to place, with huge businesses, and these were carrying on their own businesses, who carried on the large and specialized business even greater than the business of banks. So because there was no formal system of banks, and these were the people who are lending money, and they are charging interest on basis of that. So which is the first Bank of India? If we will go through that, the first Bank of India is the Bank of Hindustan. It was established in 1770, and this bank was established at Calcutta, and under the European management. So it was purely managed by European country. It was liquidated in 1830-32. Fine. So what were the 3 presidency banks, and when were they established? We will see this. From 1612 onwards, British East India Company has set up various factories on trading ports in India with the permission of local Mughal emperors, and in this process they had established 3 presidency towns. First one was Madras in 1640, and the second one is Bombay which was established in 1687, and the third one is Bengal Presidency, which was established in 1690. So this is part of history, and we can learn this by this schematic diagram. First Madras, then Bombay, and then this Bengal Presidency. So in this order we can remember these, and this is high frequency question. East India Company's headquarters moved from Surat to Bombay in 1687. Fine. These three presidency banks were set up under the charter from the British East India Company, and the setting up of these banks, the order of setting up of these banks is differing from the setting up of these presidency towns. So we will look on that. At first the Bank of Calcutta was established, then the Bank of Bombay, and in the last Bank of Madras. So this we will see this. This is the reverse order of the establishment of the presidency towns. The dates of their establishments: on 2nd June 1806, Bank of Calcutta was established. It was renamed in 1809 as a Bank of Bengal, and on 15th April 1840, Bank of Bombay was established, and on 1st July 1843, Bank of Madras was established. These worked as quasi-central banks in India for many years. And what is that quasi-central banks? They are not fully, they are not working fully as a bank. Okay, they are having some other works also. Since Calcutta was the most active trading port in India, mainly due to the trade of the British Empire, it became a banking sector. So these three presidency banks were amalgamated in 1921 into the Imperial Bank of India. This Imperial Bank. Okay, and which further in 1955 was renamed, and before renaming it was nationalized and renamed as a State Bank of India in 1955. So the logos and their places were given here. What happened with the presidency banks later on? In 1921, the presidency banks were amalgamated to form Imperial Bank of India, and it was a private entity till that time. In 1955, Imperial Bank of India was nationalized and renamed as State Bank of India. Thus, State Bank of India is oldest Bank of India among the banks that exist today. Which is the oldest joint stock bank of India? A bank that has multiple shareholders is called joint stock bank. Fine. Oldest joint stock bank of India was Bank of Upper India, established in 1863, but this bank failed in 1913. India's oldest joint stock bank, which is still working, is Allahabad Bank. It is also known as India's oldest public sector bank. It was established in 1863. So the logo is given here. You can relate this with that. Which were the first banks owned and managed by Indians? So the first bank with limited liability, we will learn about this later on. The first bank with limited liability to be managed by Indian board was Audh Commercial Bank. Fine. It was established in 1881, and at Faizabad. This bank failed in 1958. The first bank purely managed by Indians with Indian capital was Punjab National Bank. It was established in Lahore in 1895. The Punjab National Bank has not only survived till date but also is one of the largest bank in India, and its headquarter is now at Delhi. Earlier it was at Lahore, and after partition it shifted to India, and it is working from Delhi. The first Indian commercial bank which was wholly owned and managed by Indians was Central Bank of India. It was established in 1911, called India's first truly Swadeshi bank. So whenever these jargons will be asked in any exam, we can specify the name of the bank accordingly. This Central Bank of India, its founder was Sir Sorabji Pochkhanawala. First chairman was Sir Firoz Shah Mehta. Now we will look on the banks founded by NRIs. The only Indian bank to have been founded by NRI is IndusInd Bank, and it is private sector bank and is the only Indian bank to have been founded by NRIs, and the only commercial bank in India to receive ISO 9001 certification for its branch network. It began its operation in 1994 with capital of 1 billion or 14 million US dollars, and with a focus on corporate and SME lending. And after the merger with the Ashok Leland Finance Limited, it had started focusing on retail banking also. Which was the first Indian bank to open a branch at foreign soil? So Bank of India was the first Indian bank to open a branch outside India in London in 1946, and the first to open a branch in continental Europe at Paris in 1974. And so this is Bank of India, and it was founded in September 1906 as a private entity and was nationalized later on in July 1969. And since the logo of this bank is a star, its headquarter or its head office in Mumbai is located in Star House, Bandra East, Mumbai. So we have to learn the headquarters locations for these banks, and this is very frequently asked question for banks. Now we will look at the origin of Reserve Bank of India. So prior to establishment of RBI, the functions of central bank, because this RBI is the central bank of India, and there are many functions of central bank or Reserve Bank, and prior to RBI, these functions were virtually being done by the Imperial Bank of India, that is now called SBI. So RBI started its operations from April 1, 1935. The high frequency question in any exam. It was established by the RBI Act 1934, and it was established as a statutory body. This is also a high frequency question. Similarly, SBI is also a statutory body deriving its legality from SBI Act 1955. Fine. RBI did not start as a government-owned bank, but as a privately held bank without major government ownership. It started with a share capital of rupees 5 crore divided into shares of rupees 100 each. Fully paid. These were fully paid share capital. In the beginning, this entire capital was owned by the private shareholders. Out of this rupees 5 crore, the amount of rupees 4 crore 97 lakh 80,000 was subscribed by the private shareholders, while the rupees 2 lakh 20,000 was subscribed by the central government. After independence, the government passed Reserve Bank Transfer to Public Ownership Act 1948 and took over RBI from the private shareholders after paying appropriate compensation. Thus, the nationalization of RBI took place in 1949, and from January 1st, 1949, RBI started working as the government-owned bank, and now onwards it is publicly held bank. So, what is the Hilton-Young Commission? And this is also asked frequently in UPSC. The Hilton-Young Commission was the Royal Commission on Indian Currency and Finance. In short, we call this Hilton-Young Commission, but this the official name of this commission is Royal Commission on Indian Currency and Finance. So the UPSC can ask this by this name also. It was set up by the British government of India in 1920s, and in 1926 this commission had recommended to the government to create a central bank in the country, and on the basis of mainly this commission the RBI Act was passed, but there was a delay between between this recommendation and the RBI Act. So we will look on that later on. Where were the original headquarters of RBI? So the original headquarters of RBI were in Kolkata, but in 1937 it was shifted to Shahid Bhagat Singh Marg, Mumbai. And so now onwards, after 1937, it is continuing there in Mumbai. So now if the question will come, then we will mention Mumbai as the headquarter of RBI. So now we will look on the organization structure of RBI, and this is the broad structure of RBI. At the top there is one governor, and below that there are 4 deputy governors, and under which executive directors, and there is a whole hierarchy there. And but it is not necessary that these 4 deputy governors will be there. Okay, so generally the 3 deputy governors will hold the post there, and I will share this presentation, and you can click on this hyperlink, and you can go through with some more information about this. So now, who is the governor of RBI? At present, Shaktikant Das is the governor of RBI, and he replaced Urjit Patel in December 2018. And now who are the deputy governors? At present, there are 3 deputy governors. The first one is BP Kanungo, second MK Jain, and the third is MD Patra. MD Patra is the newer one among these 3. In which year Banking Regulation Act was passed? Immediately after the independence, the Government of India came up with the Banking Companies Act 1949. This act was later changed to Banking Regulation Amendment Act 1949. Further, the Banking Regulation Amendment Act of 1965 gave extensive powers to the RBI as India's central banking authority. So prior to that, SBI was working. The banking sector reforms started immediately after the independence. These reforms were basically aimed at improving the confidence level of the public, because in those days mostly banks were not trusted by the majority of banks, and because these were privately held banks, and so there was trust factor was very less. Instead, the deposits with the postal department were considered rather safe, because postal department was held by government or backed by government. Banking sector and financial sector reforms are not static events but continuous process happening even today and will keep continuing. So we have to study this in detail. Nationalization of banks, consolidation, diversification and liberalization of the banking industry in 1980s and 1990s was part of this ongoing process. A few recent events as part of the banking sector reforms included deregulation of interest rates, payment banks, increased autonomy to banks, Basel III compatibility of the banks, regulation of non-banking finance companies, NBFCs, merger of public sector banks, etc. The first major step was nationalization of the Imperial Bank of India in 1955 by the State Bank of India. So this was the major step in this. The State Bank of India was made to act as the principal agent of RBI and to handle banking transactions of the union and state governments. After that, in a major process of nationalization, 7 subsidiaries of the State Bank of India were nationalized by the State Bank of India Subsidiary Act 1959. So here is the list in the side. The Bank of Bikaner, Bank of Indore, Bank of Jaipur. Here this Bikaner and Jaipur, these were later on merged, and Bank of Mysore, Bank of Patiala, Bank of Travancore, Bank of Hyderabad and Bank of Saurashtra. So out of these 8, after merging these 2, the 7 will remain. So that's why here 7 Fine. In 1969, 14 major private commercial banks were nationalized based on their size and volume and their transactions, and we will look on that later on. Fine. So we can. I have created this mnemonic. We can use this to learn the list of these 7 banks. BIJ, my PT, HY. Fine. So BIJ Bijay, my pati hai, or you can create your own for learning, or you can use this. In 1959, the government passed the State Bank of India Subsidiary Banks Act. This made 8 banks that had belonged to princely states into a subsidiary of SBI. In 1963, SBI merged State Bank of Jaipur and State Bank of Bikaner, and the Saurashtra Bank means the State Bank of Saurashtra, constituted under the Saurashtra State Banks Amalgamation Ordinance 1950. Fine. These are not very much important for exam perspective, but we should look on that. So here is the list of 14 banks which were nationalized in 1969, and we have to know their name and we have to learn. So you go through that. And second phase of bank nationalization in 1980. So the first phase of bank nationalization was followed by the second phase of nationalization in 1980, when the government of India acquired the ownership of 6 more banks, thus bringing the total number of nationalized banks to 20. 14 plus 6. 14 plus 6. The private banks at that time were allowed to function side by side with nationalized banks because this nationalization was done based on the size of the banks and their capital and their volume of transactions, and there are many factors. So the banks which were fulfilling those norms, those were nationalized, and the others were remained as private banks. Fine. The foreign banks were allowed to work under strict regulation, so there is no change for them. So we will look on the overall picture what we have studied up to this. So these are the 14 banks at the below which were nationalized on July 19th, 1969, and after that these 6 banks were nationalized on April 15, 1980, and overall these are 20 banks which were nationalized. And we are not counting the SBI group and IDBI under this, and that is separate thing, and we will study that in a different lecture. And I have created a trick, or you can use that to learn the name of these 6 banks. So these are the 6 banks: Punjab and Sindh Bank. I have used the acronym Punjabi, Vijaya Bank, Vijaya, Oriental Bank of Commerce, Commerce, Corporation Bank, Corporate, and Andhra Bank, Andhra Pradesh, and Dena Bank, Dena. So this is the trick. A Punjabi boy named Vijay Dina. Vijay Dina, you can learn Vijay Dinanath, the famous dialogue. The trick is a Punjabi boy named Vijay Dina was studying studying commerce in a corporate college of Andhra Pradesh. So you can make your own also. What was the impact of nationalization of banks? So nationalization of banks brought the public confidence in the banking system, as earlier these banks were working in the private sector, so there was a lack of trust among the public. After 2 major phases of nationalization in India, the 80% of the banking sector came under the public sector or government ownership. After the nationalization of banks, the branches of public sector banks in India rose to approximately 800% in deposits. See the change. 800% change in the deposits and advances in the same banking system, which was earlier held by the private sector, and now it is held by the government. So this is the trust factor, and advances took a huge jump by 11,000%. Government ownership gave the public implicit faith and immense confidence in the sustainability of the public sector banks. So now we will look on the financial sector reforms and why they are needed. The financial sector reforms are one of the most important policy agenda of the authorities around the world. There are several reasons for the same. The reforms are needed to increase the efficiency of financial resource mobilization and generate higher level of growth. Financial sector reforms are utmost necessary and the macroeconomic stability. India saw its worst economic crisis in the decade of 1980s, and there are many conditions because of that this happened. So in 1991, India embarked into an era of economic reforms under the Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao, and which led to the LPG reforms, acronymed LPG, the LPG, liberalization, privatization and globalization of the Indian economy. The financial sector reforms were an integral part of these reforms. The financial sector reforms got momentum with the recommendations of various committees. So before that Narasimhan committee, there are many other committees also, very important committees. Chakravarti committee in 1985, Vagul committee 1987, and the most notably the recommendations were made by the Narasimhan committee in 1991, and this Narasimhan committee we can known as the Narasimhan committee. Fine. And this is Narasimhan committee was set up twice, and the second time it was established in 1998. What is the importance of the year 1991 in the banking of India? Prior to 1991, India was more or less an isolated economy, loosely integrated with the economy of the rest of the world. Fine. The public sector was born out of the planned economy model, which was underpinned by the Nehruvian Fabian Socialist Society or philosophy. The Fabian Society is a British socialist organization whose purpose is to advance the principles of democratic socialism via gradualist or reformist effort in the democracies rather than the revolutionary overthrow. So they want they were the people who believe in the systematic and slow changes. In 1991, India embarked on the path of LPG, and this injected new energy into the slow growing Indian economy. The first Narasimhan committee gave blueprint of banking sector reforms. On the basis of his recommendations, the government launched a comprehensive financial sector liberalization program, which included interest rate liberalization, reduction of reserve ratios, and reduced government control in banking operations, and establishment of market regulatory framework. Fine. The another outcome of liberalization was the dismantling of prohibitions against the foreign direct investment. So this FDI. So FDI was liberalized, and the hurdles were removed. Some more outcomes of reforms that impacted the banking sector were these were steps were taken to move to the market determined exchange rate system, and a unified exchange rate was achieved in 1990s. The government also released a slew of norms pertaining to asset classification, income recognitions, capital adequacy, etc., which the banks had to comply with. Many of these terms you will not be familiar with. We will study many of these terms later on in the in systematic way. The current account convertibility was allowed for the rupee in accordance with IMF conditions. Nationalized banks were allowed to raise funds from the capital market to strengthen their capital base. The lending rates for commercial banks was deregulated, thereby freeing them to lend more or as they saw fit. Also, banks were allowed to fix their own interest rates on domestic term deposits that matures within 2 years. Customers were encouraged to move away from the physical cash as RBI issued guidelines to the banks pertaining to the issuance of debit cards and smart cards. The process of introducing computerization, the computerization of the banking system. Computerization in all branches of banks began in 1993 in line with the Committee on Computerization in Banks recommendations, which had been submitted in 1989. FII, that is foreign institutional investors, were allowed to invest in dated government securities, and the major one is FEMA. FEMA, which was enacted in 1991, it replaced the FERA of 1973. The FEMA enabled the development and maintenance of Indian foreign exchange market and facilitated the external trade and payments. The NSE, that you know as National Stock Exchange, began its operations in 1994. The RBI began the practice of auctioning treasury bills spanning 14 days and 28 days. So this was also a major change. The capital index bonds were introduced in India for the first time. CIBs are a bond which whose base payment rises and falls with the consumer price index. So this capital index bond, the name suggests index. So these are tied with, or they are tied with the consumer price index, and based on that their price will change. The newly adopted policy of liberalization led the RBI to provide licenses to conduct banking operations to some private banks such as ICICI, HDFC, etc. The growth of industries and expansion of economic operations also revitalized the banking operations, which had to keep up with the demand for various banking operations by the flourishing and even nascent enterprises. The bankers also responded to the renewed demand from the industrial sector and regular customers. So here we are talking about the bank lending to the customers or loans. The new technology and customer-friendly measures were adopted by banks to attract and retain customers. So the online banking, the banking ombudsman was established so that the consumers could have a forum to address their grievances against the banks and services they provided. So this is also a major step in the banking reforms. Banking ombudsman was established in 1995. This was established under the section 35A of Banking Regulation Act of 1949. So here is the important dates in the banking history of India, and you can look on that later on. And this timeline is going on, and later on you can pause this lecture and go through that. Now we will go through the key landmarks in the journey of RBI. In 1926, the Royal Commission on the Indian Currency and Finance, that is named as Hilton, or known as Hilton Young Commission, recommended creation of Central Bank of India, and in 1927 a bill to give effect to the above recommendations was introduced in Legislative Assembly, but it was later withdrawn due to lack of agreement among the various sections of people. And because of this withdrawal of this bill, the creation of RBI was delayed. In 1933, the White Paper on Indian Constitutional Reforms recommended the creation of Reserve Bank. Fresh bill was introduced in the Legislative Assembly based on this White Paper. And based on that bill, in 1934 the bill was passed and received the Governor General's assent, and after that the RBI came into existence. In 1935, the RBI commenced operations as India's central bank on April 1 as a private shareholders bank. Up to now, this RBI is private bank, privately held bank, which uh, which is having the paid up capital of rupees 5 crore. So this is also asked in exam, 5 crore rupees. In 1942, Reserve Bank ceased to be the currency issuing authority of Burma. Before that, it was also issuing currency for Myanmar. And in 1947, RBI stopped acting as a banker to the government of Burma. In 1948, Reserve Bank stopped rendering central banking services to the Pakistan, because Pakistan was separated from India. And in 1949, the government of India nationalized the Reserve Bank under the Reserve Bank Transfer of Public Ownership Act 1948, and henceforth this RBI became the government held entity or public sector bank. In 1949, Banking Regulation Act was enacted, and in 1951, India embarked in the planning era. And after 1950, the planning came in India, and the first 5-year plan was enacted. Two major financial crises. So in 1966 and 1991, since the independence, our country has faced two major financial crises, and at that time India has devalued the currency. These financial crises of 1966 and 1991, to cope up with them, India was forced to devalue their currency. India devalued rupee for the first time in 1966, devaluation of Indian rupee in 1966, despite government attempts to obtain a positive trade balance. We are having a positive trade balance that we will learn later on. Positive trade balance means our exports were valued more than the imports. So our exports were more than the imports. India suffered a severe balance of payments deficit since the 1950s. There are different reasons for this. Inflation had caused Indian prices to become much higher than the world prices at the pre-devaluation exchange rate. When the exchange rate is fixed and a country experiences high inflation relative to other countries, that country's goods became more expensive and foreign goods became cheaper. This thing we will learn in detail how this happens and how this system works in a different lecture. So therefore, the inflation tends to increase the imports and decrease exports. And since 1950, India reigned continued trade deficits that increased in magnitude in 1960. And another additional factors which played a role in 1966 devaluation was the India's war with Pakistan in late 1965, and the US and other countries friendly towards Pakistan withdrew foreign aid to India, which further necessitated the devaluation of Indian currency. Because of all these reasons, government of India devalued rupee by 36.5% against the dollar, and this was a major setback for the Indian rupee. Now we will look on what happened in 1991. In 1991, India still had a fixed exchange rate system where the rupee was pegged to the value of a basket of currencies of major trading partners. At the end in 1990, the government of India found itself in serious economic trouble. That means we are not having money in our pocket to pay our imports. The government was close to default, and its foreign exchange reserves had dried up to the point that India could barely finance 3 weeks worth of imports. It was a grim situation. In July of 1991, the Indian government devalued the rupee by between 18 and 19%, and the government also changed its trade policy from its highly restrictive form to a system of freely tradable EXIM scripts, which allowed exporters to import 30% of the value of their exports. So in 1966, the cooperative banks came within the regulation of the RBI, and this is important. And in 1966, rupee was devalued for the first time. We already seen 14 banks were nationalized. 73 Foreign Exchange Regulation Act was amended, and exchange control was strengthened. So this is FERA. This is FERA, which was later on replaced by FEMA. In 1974, priority sector advance targets started getting fixed. Not that much important. In 1975, RRBs started. This is very important question and asked frequently. RRBs started in 1975. 1985, the Sukhmoy Chakravarti and Wagul Committee reports embarked the era of financial market reforms in India, and financial reforms. The era of financial reforms started. In 1991, India came under the balance of payment crisis. So this is 1991 condition, and RBI was forced to pledge gold to IMF to shore up reserves, and rupee was devaluated. In 1991-92, economic reforms started in India and changed the whole scenario in Indian economy. In 1993, the exchange rate became market determined, and in 1994, Board for Financial Supervision was set up. 97, regulation of the non-banking financial companies or NBFCs got strengthened, and 1998, multiple indicator approach for monetary policy was adopted for the first time. In 2000, the FEMA Act replaced the FERA, and 2002, the Clearing Corporation of India Limited started operation. This is also a major happening. In 2003, Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, or FRBM-A. This is very important, and you have to learn this date. In 2004, liquidity, we will look on these things in detail later on. In 2004, liquidity adjustment facility started working fully, and market stabilization scheme was launched. Real-time gross settlement, that is known as RTGS, when you do some banking transactions. So this started working in 2004. In 2006, RBI was empowered to regulate the money, forex, government securities, GSECs, gold related security market. In 2007, RBI was empowered to regulate the payment systems. So this is important. And now the part 2, that is structure of banking. The all banks of India can be simply divided into 3 major groups. We can classify them in 3 groups. So that is central bank, that is RBI at the apex or top, and second one is scheduled banks, and the third one is non-scheduled banks. This implies that every bank other than RBI is either a scheduled bank or a non-scheduled bank. This should be clear to all. And on the basis of functions, there are 5 broad categories of the banks in India. First one is the central bank, that is RBI, and second is commercial banks. We will learn later on. Development banks, and the fourth one is cooperative banks, and fifth is specialized banks based on their functions. So what is scheduled bank and non-scheduled banks? A bank is called a scheduled bank in India if it is listed in the second schedule of the RBI Act 1934. So under this RBI Act there are various schedules, and out of that the second schedule, whatever banks were listed there are called scheduled banks. In order to be included under this schedule of the RBI Act, banks have to fulfill certain statutory conditions. These are the conditions which were needed and which were maintained. Whatever banks were maintaining those standards were nationalized earlier. These banks need to have a paid up capital and reserves of at least 0.5 million rupees, that is 50 lakh. So this 50 lakh amount was a huge amount at that time, not now. And they should satisfy the CRAR norms and other prudential norms of RBI. So they should satisfy the RBI that their business is not being conducted in a manner prejudicial to the interest of the depositors. So their business should be for the benefit of depositors. And in our country, all banks are scheduled banks except 4 local area banks and some non-scheduled urban cooperative banks. So we will look out who all these are. So major in general, majority of banks are scheduled banks. So as of February 2015, these 4 local area banks. So these are Coastal Local Area Bank Limited, Vijayawada, Andhra Pradesh; Capital Local Area Bank Limited, Phagwada, Punjab; and Krishna Bhima Samruddhi Local Area Bank Limited, Mehboob Nagar, Andhra Pradesh; and 4th one is Subhadra Local Area Bank Limited, Kolhapur. Not that much important, and no need to remember these names. Just you have to know that they are some 4 local area banks and which are not part of the scheduled banks. And so these are the 4 banks. And the scheduled banks are further classified into scheduled commercial banks and scheduled cooperative banks. So earlier the term was scheduled banks. See, the scheduled banks and non-scheduled banks. Now we are going into detail with the scheduled banks. So these are breaked up into 2: scheduled commercial banks and scheduled cooperative banks. The scheduled banks are further classified into scheduled commercial banks and scheduled cooperative banks. The basic difference between the scheduled commercial bank and scheduled cooperative banks is their holding pattern. Scheduled cooperative banks are cooperative credit institutions that are registered under the Cooperative Societies Act, and these banks work according to the cooperative principles of the mutual assistance. Fine. So classification up to this point is displayed in the below graphics, whatever we have learned up to now. So types of banks in India. At Apex there is central bank, the name is RBI. And the second in the hierarchy is the scheduled banks, and which are classified into 2: scheduled commercial banks and scheduled cooperative banks. And the third category is non-scheduled banks, and under which there are 2 types of banks. First one is local area banks, and the second one is few non-scheduled urban cooperative banks. So thank you for listening this lecture.